I've been seeing this trend everywhere lately. People breaking characters down into levels, evolutions, power stages, and honestly, it got me thinking. Because if there's any characters that fit this idea perfectly, it's the Primarchs. You know, the 19 degenerate space babies of the Emperor. These are beings that change. They grow stronger, fall to corruption, ascend to Daemonhood, or embrace their warped nature. All of which depends on their choices, battles, and what they're willing to sacrifice. A Primarch can become something far beyond what they originally were. So today we're breaking down the 4 levels of the Primarchs and their true evolution across the setting. Because, as you're about to find out, not all Primarchs are created equal. And by the end of this video, you're going to see just how far that gap really is. Let's jump straight into the cowhole. It's time to break down the 4 levels of the Primarchs. Let's start by quickly discussing what a Primarch actually is. The Primarchs are the genetically engineered demigod sons of the Emperor of Mankind. They are effectively immortal, transhuman leaders with unmatched intelligence and strength. Each of them appears to have been gifted a portion of the Emperor's abilities. For example, Guilliman has unmatched organizational genius, Magnus the Red is blessed with his unfathomable psychic powers, and Horus with his overwhelming charisma. Corfarion reinforces this idea in First Heretic. You are all facets of the Emperor, Corfarion amended. You are aspects pulled from a genetic primer. The lion is your father's rationality, his analytical skill, unburdened by conscience. Magnus is his psychic potential and eager mind, unrestrained by patience. Russ is his ferocity, untempered by reason. Now I will say, there are a lot of theories about what the Primarchs truly are. Some say they're minor warp entities, which I disagree with, while others believe they were created using power stolen from the Chaos Gods on Molech. Personally, I think this passage from the book Saturn IX best reflects the Emperor's intent and what the Primarchs were originally meant to be. The Primarchs, she said with a small nod, they're not actually perpetuals in any biological sense. They're the artificial equivalents of the perpetuals, functionally immortal beings born from his blood and power and vigor, coded to accelerate his programming even faster. They were designed to live long enough to see his plan through to the end, and not die away so quickly the way humans did, and they were indoctrined from birth to follow his word, and not have opinions of their own, like naturally occurring perpetuals. They were made to service his dream. He took what nature had wrought in the perpetuals, and he built his own pathologized version, and through them their genetic lines, the legions. This is coming directly from Erda, the mother of the Primarchs, who has no real reason to lie. So what we're left with is this. The Primarchs are beings tied deeply to the warp, clothed in human flesh, artificially created using the power the Emperor gained on Molech through the Chaos Gods, and each one carries a unique aspect or ability gifted to them by the Emperor. I've talked extensively about their powers in past videos, so we will not be going down that rabbit hole in today's video. We truly don't know how the Primarchs were created, and I doubt GW will ever feed us that bone.
Disappointed!
But all of this still leads us directly to our first level, the base Primarch. The first level we'll be covering are the base Primarchs. A term I will say I coined, but honestly it's probably the best way to describe them at this starting point. The base Primarchs, quite simply, are the default versions of these demigods, before any major amps, enhancements, or transformations take place. Think of them as the Primarchs at their peak during the Great Crusade and into the tail end of the Heresy. This is Lorgar before unlocking his psychic powers, or the Lion before he learned how to forest walk. This doesn't mean they're lacking in powers though, far from it. Every Primarch possesses a unique ability, but at this stage many of them are either not fully realized or only partially manifested. Take Corvus Corax for example. He can already manipulate other people's perception to become functionally invisible, while Perturabo can instinctively perceive the weakness in anything before him. Every base Primarch has something. Some are just simply more developed than others. Like Rabute Gilliman's is very discreet compared to his brothers, as his warp ability makes him very good at multitasking, like extremely good. He can assimilate buttloads of information, keep track of it, and pick out patterns very quickly, all while juggling a million tasks at once. This is the perfect warp ability for the Lord of the 500 Worlds. We see Gilliman use his ability against Corvus Corax from the book Lord of Shadows. After he pestered me about it for weeks, I relented and played a series of war games against Gilliman. In the first game, he learned the hard way that no retreat, no surrender is a pointless boast, not a sound tactical doctrine. In the second game, I created effective resistance from units he considered too depleted to be a threat. In the third game, I rallied the local population as informants, agitators, and guerrilla fighters. He saw a distinction between combatant and non-combatant that I did not at the time. You ran a perfection on Gilliman? Why is this the first time I'm hearing about it? Because I didn't. From the fourth game onwards, he had my mark and beat me every single time. He learns fast and takes a broad view. While I was freeing one planet from tyranny, he was already building an empire of hundreds. So as you can see, even though Gilliman does not have the psychic prowess of Magnus the Red, the precognition of Kurz or Sanguinius, or even the speed of Jagatai Khan, he is still quite powerful in his own way. Beyond those individual traits, all base Primarchs share an absurdly high baseline. We're talking superhuman strength, speed, durability, regeneration, and intelligence, far beyond anything in the Imperium. They also project the iconic Primarch aura, compelling those around them, even Space Marines, to kneel, obey, or stand in awe of their presence. And their feats back it up. Angron can hold up the foot of a Warhound Titan, a machine weighing hundreds of tons. The Khan can move faster than thought. And Corvus Corax can literally tank an explosion in his hand and walk away like it's nothing. All of the base Primarchs should be similar to this when it comes to their stats, with a few outliers here and there. For example, the Lion, Fulgrim, and Jagatai Khan are probably the fastest, Vulcan and Ferrus Manus are physically the strongest, and of course, Magnus the Red is the most powerful.
Oh my god, my Shayla. My Shayla.
On top of that, whether they admit it or not, most Primarchs show some level of psychic abilities. Magnus and Lorgar are obvious examples as full psychers, but others express it in different ways. Kurz and Sanguinius through foresight, the Lion and Dorn through their resistance to the warp, and Gilliman and Perturabo through an almost instinctive awareness of it. Even these developments, however, are only glimpses of what their full warp potential could allow. But this is only the beginning, because the moment a Primarch steps beyond this state, when they begin to fall, to change, to embrace something far darker, they enter the next level. Corrupted Primarchs are very different from their base forms, and I'll admit only a few traitor Primarchs ever truly reach this stage. This level only occurs in the early moments of the Horus Heresy, before full-blown ascension to Daemonhood. This is kinda the in-between state, the midpoint between a vanilla Primarch and a demon Primarch. Those found on this level are figures like Fulgrim after freeing himself from the demon in the Reflection Cracked, or Horus after his fall to Chaos. At this level, the Chaos Gods begin bestowing gifts upon their chosen champions. These gifts enhance their physical abilities, like strength, speed, and durability, and in many cases, dramatically amplify or even unlock psychic potential. Fulgrim is one of the best examples of this level. After regaining control of his body from the demon of the Lair Blade, he willingly embraced Slaanesh, devoting himself fully to the pursuit of excess and sensation. And with that choice comes power, abilities he simply did not possess as a base Primarch. One of these abilities is his new psychic powers, which we see him use in the book Reflection Cracked on a massive scale. Fulgrim stood alone before the war machine, his pistol cast aside and his sword held loosely at his side. The Titan's autoloaders ratcheted canisters of shells around from its rear hoppers, and the breeches snapped shut on a fresh load. Fulgrim's free hand reached up to the battle engine, as though demanding it to halt its march. A shimmering nimbus of misty light gathered around the Phoenician, its substance shot with threads of barely visible lightning. Fulgrim's splayed fingers closed into a fist, and he twisted his grip as though tearing at unseen ropes. The battle engine halted in its rampage, the cockpit snapping up and its weapon arms jerking spasmodically as though the machine was suffering a hideous seizure. Fulgrim's outstretched hand continued pulling and twisting at the air, and the Titan's warhorn brayed with plaintive horror. The cockpit panes shattered, spraying glass tears to the ground as it slumped back onto its hissing legs. So we see here that Fulgrim has both gained psychic powers, and they seem incredibly powerful. I mean, the dude just straight up force-choked a Titan. And Fulgrim himself even confirms the source of this power. "What did you do?" asked Lucius. Fulgrim turned his dead black eyes upon him and said, "A little something I learned from the forces that empower me. A trifle, nothing more." Yep, right there, plain and simple. Fulgrim admits that his psychic powers and the other gifts he has received are directly from the Chaos Gods, and to be specific, Slaanesh. In addition to now being a space wizard, Fulgrim also gains an immensely powerful healing factor, far beyond what we see in other Primarchs. Even while being brutally tortured by his own captains, his body regenerates almost instantly. Like a snake that had recently shed its skin, the filmy texture of Fulgrim's foot was oily and new, raw and yet to assume its final form. "Look," said Lucius, "he's healing. You have to keep up the pressure." Fabius transferred his gaze from Fulgrim's face to his healing foot with academic interest. I mean, heck, Fulgrim can even tank a sniper round to the dome and be completely fine. We see a similar power amp with Horus after accepting chaos. His physical strength, durability, and psychic powers all increase to an extreme degree. After his time within the warp at Molech, his very form becomes unstable, shifting and warping like other powerful psychers such as Magnus the Red, Malkador, or the Emperor himself, suggesting that Horus after Molech may be similar to them in power. So the corrupted Primarch level represents a transitional state, a midpoint where a Primarch has moved beyond their base limitations but has not yet fully ascended. It's the calm before the storm, because the next level is Daemonhood. Daemonhood is the fate that ultimately befalls most of the traitor Primarchs. More specifically, Mortarion, Angron, Lorgar, Perturabo, Fulgrim, and Magnus the Red, at various points during and after the event of the Horus Heresy. At its core, Daemonhood is a transformation. A Primarch already being deeply tied to the warp but bound within a physical mortal body is elevated into something entirely different. When a traitor Primarch ascends, they become a Demon Primarch, a form of a demon prince that is far more powerful than average, simply because they began as a Primarch. Like all demon princes, they no longer possess a truly mortal form. Their souls are now bound to, if not outright owned, by the Chaos God or gods they serve. And with that ascension comes immense power. Demon Primarchs can't truly be killed in the material universe. At most, they are banished back into the warp for a time. Their physical abilities like strength, durability, and speed are pushed to an even more absurd level, and they gain access to a vast array of supernatural and psychic abilities. We see Angron moving so violently that space itself seems to distort around him. We also see that Magnus is able to obliterate other Primarchs, such as Vulcan, at an atomic level. Mortarion, meanwhile, can endure nearly everything the Khan throws at him in Warhawk, with the exception of a perfectly placed headshot. This goes beyond physical, as Angron gains Khorne's blessings, becoming resistant to psychic attacks. Mortarion can wield Nurgle's magic, hurling plague-infested warp attacks at his foes, and Purdy can weave all four powers of the Chaos Gods, combining science and the warp to create monstrous machines. This implies, of course, to all 6 Demon Primarchs, who each gain their own unique abilities and boons from their patron Chaos God. But for all that power, there's a cost. By becoming a demon, a Primarch becomes an extension of their patron god's will, often losing much of their independence they once had. They are no longer fully their own being. They are a piece of something greater and far more controlling. They are also bound by the nature of the warp itself. Manifesting in real space requires immense warp energy, rituals, or specific conditions. They are powerful, but not always present, and this is where Daemonhood becomes interesting from a power scaling perspective. Because in my mind, Daemonhood is a shortcut, the easy road to power. And yeah, some of you might disagree with this analogy I'm about to drop on your asses, but it's the best way to frame it. Demon Primarchs are essentially the dark side from Star Wars. And just like Anakin Skywalker choosing the immediate power to save Banda-Bear, the traitor Primarchs are taking a faster path to strength, but at the cost of their independence, their growth, and ultimately, their souls.
What? How can you do this? This is outrageous. It's unfair. How can you be on the council and not be a master?
They gain immense power instantly, but they cap themselves. They hit a ceiling, an incredibly high one, but a ceiling nonetheless. Which leads us to the final level, Awakened Primarchs. Awakened Primarchs, the final evolution of the Primarchs, who are apparently Pokemon at this point. Primarchs who reach this level, which I will say is a very short list, are those who have unlocked their full potential, often by embracing their nature as warp entities, resulting in a power level far beyond their already immense 30k capabilities. This means that unlike their base states, where their powers are more moderate to limited in capacity, they increase exponentially. A perfect example of this is Corvus Corax, one if not the only Primarch who has fully reached his potential. In his base state, as we addressed earlier, Corax was limited to being able to disappear entirely from someone's perception, known as rave slipping. But now with his powers fully awakened, his abilities have grown far more deadly. This is perfectly seen in the Shadow of the Past, when Corax takes on Lorgar, who is now a demon Primarch within the Eye of Terror. "What has happened to you, brother? I have ascended," said Lorgar. He indicated Corax with the twitch of his rod. "I might ask the same of you." The Raven Lord strode forwards, intent on Lorgar Aurelian. "I am what I always have been," said Corax. "I am vengeance incarnate. I am justice delivered. This place, beyond the veil, has revealed what we all are. Underneath the veneer of humanity, our Father crafted for us, we are of the warp." So not only does Corax articulate what all Primarchs are capable of, but throughout his fight with Lorgar, we see him shift forms, from a towering storm reefed in white lightning, to a cloud of ravens, to a giant monstrous bird, and even return to his mortal body. Corax is shown evenly contesting a demon Primarch, and in some cases outright dominating Lorgar, even while under fire from multiple word bearers. Now I will say that this fight takes place within the Eye of Terror, which may be allowing Corax to perform all of these transformations, but he should still be able to use these abilities within the material realm, just maybe not to the same extreme degree. Isn't it crazy we still haven't seen Corvus Corax in the current setting? From this, we see that when a Primarch fully awakens their warp abilities, the powers they had at their base state become far more potent. As we see with Corax, he goes from simply disappearing into shadows to being able to alter his form at will. Another Primarch we see either fully or at least partially manifest new warp abilities is the Lion, who has gained the Force Walk ability, giving him the power to fast travel across the galaxy. While we don't have full confirmation that this is indeed his warp ability, the 10th edition Dark Angels Codex alludes to it. His powers restored and greater, or at least stranger, than they had ever been, his eyes open to the reality he had awoken to. I truthfully think the Lion has a lot more in the tank to awaken, since his 30k base form had already shown multiple abilities, from near Ultra Instinct, which helped him fight Conrad Kurz and his precognition, to his ability of channeling psychic energy into his weapons, which he used to implode the fraud Garros Fateweaver. It's still largely unknown how they reached this state, but it seems to come through time, experience, or full acceptance of what they are, as seen with Corax and potentially the Lion. And this is where things differ from the Demon Primarchs. Unlike the Demon Primarchs, who are effectively capped, awakened Primarchs can continue to grow, develop, and increase their power, which implies that all the remaining Loyalist Primarchs may have the potential to reach this level and then surpass the Demon Primarchs entirely. Maybe Guilliman is next. At least, I'm praying for it. The man needs some new warp abilities to actually win a fight. We actually see Guilliman getting a weird sense that he's not exactly a creature of the Materium when he teleports in Dark Imperium. There was always a moment of enlightenment for Guilliman during teleportation, where he hung in a state that was neither life nor death. In those moments when his soul straddled two worlds, he knew himself for what he truly was, not a being of matter alone, but a creature of both realities. In those moments, he was convinced, no, he knew, that he was spun from warp stuff and matter both. Though the feeling faded and became absurd after his deliverance to his destination, at that time it was profound, as if an understanding of the mysteries of creation awaited his discovery if he had but the courage to look a little deeper. So maybe if Guilliman gets over that last hurdle, he may fully awaken his warp powers. Is GW setting up Guilliman vs. Fulgrim Part 2? Let me know down in the comments. Like, what do we think Guilliman's powers would even be? He's the greatest multitasker in the entire Imperium, but how would that look on page? I mean, Corvus Corax went from disappearing to being able to change his form completely. So maybe Guilliman would gain some psychic power? Maybe something in the realm of introspection, or slowing time down so he could process information even faster. But there you have it, the 4 levels of the Primarchs. From their base forms, to those who embrace corruption, to the terrifying heights of Daemonhood, and finally to the rare and awe-inspiring awakened state. We've seen how choices, experiences, and acceptance of their true nature shape these degenerate space babies. If you enjoyed this short breakdown, make sure to check out my Patreon and YouTube members. Shout out the fellows already there. Impossy Paul, Tyler Pick 7, Musty, Keedry, Seth Capizilla, Lag, Cunning Karkle, Caleb White, Dinkleberry, Omar, and Altrazon 27. As always, my beloved, smelly, stinky herd, stay milked, and I will see you all very, very soon.